Good morning, folks. I want to welcome all of you here today. Looks like we got a pretty good crowd. And I just wanted to let you know that the Ag Committee, the House Ag Committee and the Senate Ag Committee are honored to be here to host Kelly Norris, our state forester, and all of her guests that will work on this briefing for us. So another thing you need to know is the committee members of this House and the Senate need to come up here and get a handout if they don't already have one. Kelly was good enough to bring all this stuff for us, so we need to take it with us before we leave. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kelly Norris. She's our state forester, and we're proud to have her here, and we'll just let her take control.
All right, thank you, Chairman Winters, and I see Chairman French over there too, so wonderful. Thank you all this morning. It's a pleasure to be here at this Forest Health briefing today. So all welcome. What we're gonna do is do a couple introductions first, and then I'll do my presentation, and we have a PowerPoint. And from that, we're gonna have a presentation from the Forest Service as well from the BLM. So you'll have all three agencies here to talk to you today. We also will have public comment. We have some great visitors from Niman. We have the Niman Mills here from Hewlett Country, and we also have Gary here from Saratoga Mill as well. So we have some timber industry as well. This is gonna be a great morning. I'd like to introduce Rocky Mountain Regional Forester Troy Heidecker. Troy is here. He came from Denver this morning. Roads were okay?
Yeah, not bad.
All right, that's good. And I also have the Bureau of Land Management State Forester Heidi Rogers here. And we have quite a few people here, forest supervisors. We have some BLM lead staff as well. I will do a quick introduction of some state people that are here. I have Interim Director of State Lands, Jason Crowder. Did see him, he's back there. Okay, great. We have Assistant State Forester of Operations, Matt Marshall, as well as our Forest Health Specialist, Harrison Brooks, who's here, and Assistant Fire Management Officer, Chris Fallbeck. I think Chris was here somewhere. Yep, so fire questions. And then I see we have Doug Miyamoto, Director of Ag, is here as well. I didn't see any other directors, but I did want to welcome them if you are here. With that, Troy, do you want to quickly introduce who's all here? I can help you because you just walked in too.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I think we have the remaining forest supervisors. Some of them have recently retired, but we have the forest supervisors from all the Wyoming forests here, as well as parts of South Dakota. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would encompass both the Rocky Mountain region and the Intermountain region, Region 4, Bridger Teton, Shoshone, Bighorn, a little sliver of the Caribou Targhee, the Ashley, the Uinta Wasatch Cass, the Medbo Route, Thunder Basin National Grasslands.
Okay. Heidi.
Good morning. Today here for BLM, we have Deputy State Director of Resources and Policy Management, Jennifer Fleury-McConkey, Deputy State Director of Communications, Brad Purdy, and our Fire Management Officer, Paul Hone.
All right, let's get started. We got a lot to cover. All right. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Yay, next slide. We can move on. Okay, we're already moving through this so fast. Okay, Forest Health Surveying and Monitoring. It's a collaborative effort between Wyoming State Forestry, our federal agencies, our conservation districts, as well as our local communities. In 2024, approximately 17.5 million acres of forested lands were surveyed for forest health threats by state forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. Of the 17.5 million acres flown, approximately 179,000 acres were found to have insect, disease, and abiotic issues, excluding fire. This is double the amount from previous years. State Forestry also surveyed invasive insects such as the emerald ash borer, spongy moth, and other exotic beetles within Wyoming's communities. And the good news is we did not find any new exotic insects in our communities. Next slide. So in 2024, drought stress was minimal in the first half of the year, only to increase in intensity the second half of the year. Drought can have substantial impacts to the health of Wyoming's forests, and prolonged drought often leads to increases in tree mortality caused by insect and diseases. Okay, next slide. The native western spruce budworm continues to be Wyoming's most damaging forest pest by acreage. Western spruce budworm is a defoliator that typically feeds on fresh grown needles from Douglas fir trees of all ages and sizes. Other species that it can impact are subalpine fir as well as spruce trees. The highest damage can be found in the southern bighorns on multiple ownerships, as well as in the Bridger Teton and the Caribou-Targhee National Forests. In 2024, the increases in western spruce budworm activity were primarily found in Lincoln and Teton counties. And this heavy feeding from these over and over of the new growth does lead eventually, or can lead to, tree mortality. Okay, next slide. The mountain pine beetle. The mountain pine beetle is continuing to remain a concern across Wyoming's forests. In 2023, mortality had been primarily found in lodgepole and five-needle pine trees in the Bridger Teton and Caribou-Targhee National Forests. In 2024, the highest amount of mountain pine beetle activity was found in the Bridger Teton and Caribou-Targhee again. But we've also found an increase in the amount and size of pockets of mortality along the eastern side of the Bighorns, as well as in the Black Hills in Ponderosa pine. We will continue to monitor these areas and assist in any mitigation efforts as best we can. Wyoming had some very large wildfires that impacted forested lands last year, primarily on federal forested lands. The Pack Trail Fire, which was located in the Bridger Teton and Shoshone National Forest, burned across a forested landscape that contained 80% dead trees, whose mortality was from insect and disease outbreaks. On the other hand, the Elk Fire, located in the Bighorn National Forest, burned across a landscape with over 90% of the forest being live trees. Research indicates areas with low to moderate fire severity will likely see increases in beetle activity and tree mortality as a result. It will be less likely to see beetle activity in areas where fires were in high severity. The University of Wyoming has recently conducted with State Forestry and is very interested in coordinating a study to track the effects of both of these fires long-term. We are expecting possibly, based on the research, to see an influx of beetle activity, likely in the Bighorns, possibly also in the BT. Okay, next slide. All right, we're gonna shift from forest health monitoring results, and I wanna give this committee a state forestry update on the 2024 fire season. So last year, Wyoming had a well above fire season, fire year, I would call it. Wyoming reported 2,167 fires on approximately 850,429 acres. 84% of the fires reported were on state and private lands, with 70% of the acres burned on those lands. 24 emergency fire suppression account fires were approved within 13 different counties. Estimated cost share responsibilities for these 24 fires amounted to about $55 million, with total cost of these fires is estimated to over $103.3 million. 4 emergency fire suppression account fires were declared FEMA Fire Management Assistant Grant fires, or FMAG fires. This means the state can be reimbursed for certain costs associated with these FMAG fires within a certain approved period amount of time. So we will be able to, after we get all this billing done in this coming year, go and request for reimbursement in these 4 FMAG fires. And those 4 FMAG fires were, I think I have them listed. Yes, I do. Okay, we had the Happy Jack Fire, which happened March 1st of last year here in this county. We had the Pleasant Valley Fire, and that was impacting both Platte and Goshen. Then we had House Draw. How can I forget House Draw? The largest fire in Wyoming history. And then we had Elk Fire. So those were our 4 approved FMAG fires last year. And that is the highest amount of FMAG fires since 2012. Okay. State Forestry celebrated our 21st operation for the Helitack program, with 2024 being the busiest year yet. At times, the Helitack program responded to 3 or 4 fires in a day. The helicopter contract was extended an extra 34 days into late October due to the fire weather conditions. I believe their last day, they even responded to a fire in Glendale State Park. The program responded to 76 initial attack fires with 248.9 flight hours. The 2024 legislative session approved funding to build a helibase for our State Forestry Heli-TAC program at the Casper Airport. Construction will begin this year, and the new base will be able to fit up to 3 helicopters with living quarters for 12 seasonals. Thank you to Wyoming Legislature for your support in this needed resource. Our single-engine air tanker program had its 5th season of operation, responding to fires within the state. And we call them SEATs. So the SEAT Aviation Program, it is a true collaborative, as our federal partners at the BLM and U.S. Forest Service built a new air tanker base at the Casper Airport, which is where our contracted seats are located. The BLM also provides funding to staff that seat base, helping to support our contracted seats. The newly constructed air tanker base is directly across from where our helibase will be built. The State Forestry Smoke Buster crew had one of the busiest fire seasons as well. The 7-person inmate hand crew responded to 31 wildfires within 9 different counties. And this year, the busters have already been out responding to a fire in Platte County last weekend, I think it was, in February. Okay, next slide. All right, moving from wildfire suppression, I'd like to provide an update on how State Forestry is helping to increase the pace and scale of active management on Wyoming state and federally managed forests. In state fiscal year 2024, State Forestry sold 3.5 million board feet of timber on 918 acres of state trust lands. State Forestry also contracted 8 forest health projects on 1,287 acres of state trust lands, which were funded through the Trust Preservation and Enhancement Account, matched with federal funding. State Forestry also recognizes the importance of private land forest management, and we are currently in the process of filling a year-round position as an at-will employee contractor in Casper to assist in the building of private land management, specifically through the use of the NRCS programs across Wyoming. The Good Neighbor Authority program allows the state to partner with federal agencies to do work on federal lands, utilizing our staff's expertise in contracting system to help get more work done on the ground. Last fiscal year, State Forestry sold 6.3 million board feet of timber on 1,631 acres of federal lands. We also contracted out hundreds of acres of pre-commercial thinning, field treatment work, and over 1,300 acres of NEPA surveys to help move the NEPA process quicker. I do want to highlight the 2024 legislative session, which included the passing of House Bill 43. This allowed an expansion in the number of Good Neighbor Authority positions State Forestry could hire. Over the last year, State Forestry has added a new position on the Shoshone National Forest in DuBois. State Forestry is also, we are in the finalizing a permanent forester position through GNA in the Black Hills out of Newcastle. And we've added a year-round forestry position that will support forest work in the Bighorns. These additional positions directly support President Trump's new executive order, the immediate expansion of American timber production. So thank you to the Wyoming Legislature for your support in these efforts as well. In early February, State Forestry participated in a statewide timber meeting with regional leadership and forest supervisors from the U.S. Forest Service, as well as state leadership from the BLM, to discuss timber program improvements, efficiencies, and to plan out the next 2 to 5 years worth of work across Wyoming. State Forestry is committed to assisting the federal agencies through our Good Neighbor Authority agreements, helping to build this capacity while reducing the costs to implement these projects and the administration through our contracting processes. And I do want to highlight, you may recognize some people, you made it in our annual report and on the slide from our Good Neighbor Authority tour with this committee back in September. So we hope to do that again, okay? Okay, lastly, I want to finish with some highlights from 2024. Last May, our forestry conservation program planted 4,700 seedlings in the 2012 Oil Creek Burn Scar, which was located just outside of Newcastle. The Ponderosa pine seedlings were grown out from native Wyoming seed that was collected by cones through our conservation program from state trust lands about 7 years prior. Planters were trained, and after the planting project, each one was given a planting certificate. I want to highlight the 2024 Forest Landowner of the Year, Jack and Cecilia Cornson, and the Belle Ott Ranch. The Belle Ott Ranch is located near Garrett, Wyoming, and has a long history of active forest management on the property going back almost 3 decades. Jack and Cecilia have continued to manage their forest lands, implementing pre-commercial thinning, aspen enhancement, and prescribed burn projects, which were in conjunction with the BLM. State Forestry organized and hosted the first Wyoming Tree Academy this past fall, bringing in arborists and tree care specialists from Wyoming and all over the Rocky Mountain region. The 2024 Outstanding Urban and Community Forestry Program was awarded to the city of Sheridan, and the 2024 Outstanding Arborist of the Year went to Roy Holdeman. Roy recently retired after more than 30 years working for Campbell County. The 2024 Wyoming State Forestry Undaunted Courage Awards were awarded to 3 very deserving recipients. State Forestry's Travis Pardue, who saved 2 civilian lives during the Happy Jack Fire. And then we had State Forestry's Russell Haynes and Yoder Fire District Department Justin Burkhart, who are also given awards for helping save a civilian life during the Elk Fire. And with that, I will conclude my report here and stand for any questions the committee or legislators may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Kelly. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is John Winter. I'm the chairman of the House Ag Committee. So are there any questions for Kelly? Yes, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kelly, what those executive orders that Trump just made this weekend on streamlining permitting and regulations, what does that all mean? Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Kelly.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, those are great questions. Or it is a great question. So I have here the executive order of the immediate expansion of the American timber production. There was also, we were just talking about this yesterday with the Nymans, another one that came out, you're right, specific to permitting. From what we're gathering, this is to really streamline how we move our permitting process with timber. Both agencies will probably be able to talk to you a little bit more in depth about what they are being directed to do through these executive orders. There's timelines for both of them to take a look at how they can really become more efficient. But good neighbor authority is actually highlighted in these executive orders as well. We believe that much of the efficiencies can be found through the good neighbor authority, through state contracting systems. Some of it also includes language in here about ESA. There's things in here when it comes to moving forward on white bark pine restoration. So it's pretty well lined out, executive orders looking really to move projects on the ground faster.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Kelly, with these executive orders, we see those are executive orders for the federal government to start to expedite this. But I think what we've seen in recent years is the way we've been moving a lot of timber, get these done is through GNA, through state foresters, basically implementing those timber sales. And so if we end up in an expedited situation, what's the demand going to be on your agencies to make sure that that actually happens? And so, you give us a report on 24 back, put on your crystal ball, you got the executive orders. We here as the state and our federal partners will move this timber. What's that mean to your agency?
Go ahead, Kelly.
Means we better buckle up. That is what we discussed at our timber meeting in early February. What can this look like? what can GNA look like on these forests in a different way? What if we do state contracting, yet we work with our Forest Service partners and they're setting up timber sales to state standards instead of their standards, way cheaper, contract through the state system, and then we work on administration together, employees and state agency employees, both Forest Service, and create a different culture off of our state timber programs. That does mean we're going to need to really look at what the contracting, that's going to be a pretty large increase in contracting through the state. So that is going to have an impact to us in particular. It's also going to have us take a real hard look at what our foresters can and cannot do. Many of them were out on wildfires all summer. So what does that look to our capacity to support wildland fire? And because we need those foresters that know how to contract and move that wood on the ground with hand step in line with those Forest Service foresters and employees. So we are going to see a need for increase in support, probably need to relook at how many good neighbor positions we're going to need to review at that into the future to see what our capacity is.
So if I may, John, so a follow-up question to that is sometimes these GNA positions even expand the ways of federal funds,
Correct.
but sometimes it also requires some state funding. So, you know, we go through this whole wildfire season, I really see that timber sawmill versus on helicopters and planes. What's it gonna take to get this done? Here's all, talk about that federal, state nexus as far as who's funding this, and what can we expect?
Chairman, Senator, so we've already made plans between all of our forests together where our top priorities are. To be clear, we had a mill lose a substantial amount of wood in that Pack Trail Fish Creek fire in the Shoshone. And we are that's a priority for us, is to find wood there. We also have a mill that is operating at half capacity, and that is also a priority for us, correct, right? So we have gone and asked the Forest Service for approximately about $500,000 to help supplement the staffing for our staff. If we were to grow and expand, though, we need to really take a hard look at what maybe the state could or could not bring to the table. The state did not fund GNA last biennium. The biennium before, we did have $400,000 put into state forestry's account to help support GNA in particular. That was used to support vehicles, all that equipment. To use federal funding to purchase things like vehicles is very, very difficult. We try and really, really avoid all that. So there's certain things that can help support the program that doesn't even have to necessarily support the salaries of the staff. Does that answer your question?
No.
I don't have a good number. Do you, in what I'm going to request, because I don't know yet. We need to see how much they really give us to do, too. I wish I had a crystal ball.
And I just want to note too, that once the program really starts to get feet under it, they're going to generate revenue that the state's going to retain. And so this can be self-supporting. We've seen this model work in other places where we get the program rolling, they're administering timber sales, the contracting's under them. Those receipts that they get from the sale of timber comes right back to the state, and so they can start to build their own organization that's self-supported.
To be fair, that can be done in Idaho, where your timber is valuable. The only place we've been able to do that is in the Black Hills, and that is the only place why we're doing a permanent forester there, is because in the Black Hills. So the rest of our forests, our timber isn't worth as much as it is in comparison, so it will be difficult to do in certain forests. And we don't typically share funding between forest to forest. Each forest likes to keep their revenue in their agreements to continue to do the work on their forest and their unit.
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
This is my opinion speaking, we stalled because of the opposition of the former administration. I feel like this announcement this week opened up some doors for us. If we got this organization going, we got a little sale lined up that would move some timber out, improve the road, improve some fisheries. If we get something like this rolling again with your help, and the new announcement from the administration, does this kick open some doors for us?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, absolutely. In our conversations with the Bridger Teton in particular, there is a desire. There's a desire to actually, that is the one place I think we're going to see a pretty large demand and increase in GNA. There is a request for us. We will have our new GNA position in Pinedale start middle of March. We have our new assistant district forester in Lyman started yesterday. So we're staffing up in your area, and we can, depending on where this funding comes in from the Forest Service, we can staff up more. This is what I'm getting at, back to Senator Hicks's question. I'm only allowed right now under House Bill 43 to hire 4 permanent and 6 at-will employee contracts. Right now, we are right at that edge, and I have to use that at-will employee contracts even for seasonals. Even if we're going to push a seasonal through, that holds up one of those positions. So that is where you may see State Forestry coming back next year saying we need to revisit House Bill 43 and take a look at those numbers to do exactly what you're talking about, open up and do more work through our GNA program.
Yes, Representative Eklund.
So I guess my discussion always comes back to the same thing, continuity from the federal government. We talked of revenues we're going to be able to generate with a logging industry that's been put out of business, seems to be put out of business about 4 or 8 years. Is there anything the state can do? And I think we're doing the best we can. Have you thought of ways that we can push along continuity between administrations? I think we're working on it, and I'm grateful for what you have done. We had it once. Once upon a time, 50 years ago, it was third eating industry in Wyoming. We should be able to get back to that. And the reason our forests probably aren't very good is because we haven't managed them. We have some plan, collaboration at least between U.S. Forest Service and state forestry to have some kind of permanence for our logging industry.
Go ahead, Kelly, or the Forest Service, whoever.
Chairman, and we can tag team this, absolutely. That we believe that Good Neighbor Authority is going to help us through that. The one challenge with Good Neighbor Authority is there's not permanent funding yet. And so that makes it a little bit challenging, but that can help with these swings because remember, these projects are in state contracts versus federal contracts. So that can help with some continuity. We also, one of the core challenges we had is what you saw is, you're absolutely right, Senator Dockstader, is the last 4 years, there hasn't been a lot of funding and a push to do this type of work. I think it went to larger scale wildfire priorities in other states, and that's where that funding went. And so now we've gotten together and we've really sat down across all the forests and said, what needs to be the priority right now? How are we going to get this done? And not just in the 2 years, but in the next 5 years, and go back to 5-year planning so that when we do have a swing in 4 years, we still have plans. We have asked for the money. We're moving forward on these projects. And I think holding both the state and the Forest Service accountable on that is going to be really helpful in getting this momentum going. These executive orders are going to really, I think, help kick this off as well and make a difference.
Senator Hicks.
Subject representative, but now we got our other federal partners in there, right? So how does GNA, the question is, can you use GNA for field firefighters too? And timber section, one federal agency with GNA, partners on BLM, something else, even though they do have timber resources. Tell us how you see that fitting in, and what role can be the land, be the land
Yeah.
GNA to provide fuel management?
That's a, Senator, that's a good point. We have quite a few different timber sales through the BLM. We have a pretty decent one in the Southern Bighorns. We have a couple in the Shirleys. We're looking at a few, definitely out of Rollins. And we're looking at one where we're gonna have one state contract and we're gonna contract out BLM, Forest Service, state, and then we'll have private lands. So what we're trying to do is, where is that wood? What is the barriers? Is it a road that needs to get fixed? How do we really assess where it is? And the biggest thing we need to do is make sure the BLM is at the table at the time we're planning this with the Forest Service and the state, so that we can make sure they get the NEPA done, so that when we're ready to rock and roll on a project, they have their side completed. The BLM has been extremely helpful partner in very specific areas, I would say. And when we look at that Buffalo position that we're adding, that position is to blend with the BLM and bring in some G&A funding through the BLM side to help get support that forester out of the Buffalo office, as one example. And I don't know if you want to add anything more to that. You good? Okay.
Does the BLM have any response to that?
I think Kelly covered it. Thank you, Chairman.
I feel confident to step in whenever you think is necessary. Yes, Speaker Nyman.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my question would be to the other folks here in the room. I mean, our state forestry is doing, I believe, a good job of managing our resources. My question is to you folks, with this new change of administration, what do you see as far as the implementation of this? I mean, a lot of times I'm hearing from other sources to energy, gas, coal, oil, the permitting processes and all the churn basically that's happening right now. This is a dynamic change from previous administration. I think you can argue that I would hope not. How quick can you guys get this stuff actually active on the ground and we start seeing more tonnage being offered? Specifically in my area, our mills are short on material. They're restricting the volume. But now that you've got this directive, how long before we can start to see actual action on this as far as from your agencies and this cooperative effort to see an actual transformation of the
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker Nyman. The process is, just give you a quick example here, and I carry it around with me, I don't have it here, but when I first got hired with the Forest Service, I filled out a piece of paper, front and back, and started the next week as a seasonal employee. That process takes 9 months for us to hire people now. So if we can find efficiencies, whether it's from hiring, to getting work done through permitting, to just looking across all lands with all our partners, we can move more and we can move quicker. And we're doing everything we can without executive orders to do that here in this region, which is rolling back to bare minimum requirements, looking at what's self-imposed versus what's in law regulation, and trying to be as efficient as we can. In terms of timing, it's challenging. If the executive order is implemented, I mean, Fish and Wildlife Service that does the Endangered Species Act consultation is limited in capacity, and we have lengthy consultation periods with them. There's no doubt about it. But it's not just with Fish and Wildlife Service, but we have a focus with the state. I think that personally, the example that we're setting and the strategy that Kelly outlined, where we're open books to each other, where does it make sense for the state to take it? Where does it, I mean, really, if you want to look at it like cooperative federalism, that's what we're doing here. We're looking to see if the state system is more efficient, then let's use the state system. We can't do it by ourselves. They can't do it by themselves. So work together with the BLM, look at private sector and do as much as we can to make it happen. But I'm confident that the moves through executive orders and through promulgation of rules or removing rules is going to be able to streamline work significantly. And we have a whole bunch of stuff that we're working on in Black Hills and otherwise within our existing authorities, including categorical exclusions, to do a whole bunch of work this year.
Yes, so considering we have 5 field foresters across the state, we definitely depend upon our partners in state forestry. As Kelly alluded to earlier, we had packaged and put out 2 larger GNA cells They ended up going no bid, but we're working on getting those back out. But since I've gotten here in the state of Wyoming, Kelly and I have sat down and talked about how we can improve our process. We've been building relations across the state where they were maybe not as good. And at this point, we don't have any empty positions to hire more, so our partnership is really going to get us through that finish line.
So basically, we can look forward to expedited action on that.
Yes, I would like to commit to that, and I'd like to see that.
Thank you.
Chairman, I've got one more question.
Go ahead.
We've heard a lot about GNA with partnering between the state and the federal government. I just looked through this room and I see a lot of other local partners out there that are subdivisions of state government that are eligible to enter into GNA contracts. I'm aware that BLM has done some fuels GNA contracts with conservation districts around Wyoming. Again, trying to harness that cost efficiency and that local knowledge. I'm not aware of the Forest Service has done any GNA contracts with any conservation districts yet. I know they've done a tremendous amount of work with fuels reduction, particularly a number of forests that I'd like to see when we see the opportunity to expand both in the state and also like each one of you answer how you see moving forward with the role and how to integrate and make more efficient use, particularly fuel reduction with those local conservation districts and rural fire departments.
Do you want to start or you want me to start?
Go ahead. Whoever
Go ahead.
wants to go.
Yeah, I assume with conservation districts, with counties, we have Good Neighbor Authority. It's been expanded, and there were some challenges with it in terms of retaining receipts and all those things. That's been taken care of, I believe, in the latest Farm Bill. But I think the idea that Kelly and I and BLM are looking at is all lands, all hands. And the more we share that, whether it's through the Collaborative Wildfire Risk Reduction Program, federal funding to help do the fuels reduction, we're there. The local knowledge and the people, absolutely, 100% in line with that, and look to move out.
I really love the idea of more use at the local level with our conservation districts and with our fire departments. What we saw when we had the bark beetle funds through state forestry, when we went and did bark beetle work quite a bit in the Black Hills, I remember, and I think we did quite a bit in the Bighorns during Western spruce budworm. What ended up happening is while the states were helping with GNA at the time on the federal lands, we in turn really depended on our conservation districts to come and do the work. We'd help them lay it out, but they actually contracted quite a bit of that work through that bark beetle funds themselves. Specifically, I think in the Bighorns and over in the Black Hills and in Campbell County. So I think there's well-trained staff in the conservation districts that can really help us expand and participate. They love being out in the woods with us, and I think that is a great point. We work really closely with our fire wardens and the FireWise coordinators as well. We have fire wardens that are putting together large-scale vegetation projects across the state. Again, they know the highest risk areas. They know where the priorities are. We help them with the grants, and we'll continue to do that as well. So I think there is, just like you are seeing, that cross-boundary. The state is that helps, that connector from the feds down to the conservations and the local level units, but we need all hands on deck.
Any follow-up? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so currently BLM has 32 active GNA agreements across the state. The majority of them, we have a handful that are set to expire this year, but the majority of them are with the counties. We have them with Wyoming Game and Fish, Wyoming Department of Ag, State Forestry. We're looking to find places where we can make efficiencies with how we're doing GNA. So we've got a separate agreement for fuels and a separate one for forestry, and I'm looking to combine those into one agreement. And we're looking at other ways where we can do that so we don't have so many separate agreements. But at this point, we're not sure that we can do that with the counties or with the conservation districts.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
remind everybody, it's a three-legged stool. I don't need to forget one of those legs.
I'll say this, we'll bring them up next year and we can have them present too. Okay? All right.
I would just say that we're fortunate to have Kelly, and she will be keeping us posted as to how the BLM and the Forest Service and they are all getting along and what we're getting done. So just be aware, folks. Any other questions?
And Chairman, we can allow the Forest Service to present. He has a whole presentation he can provide to the legislators. And then beyond.
Would you go ahead and present? Thank you.
I will. I'll keep it brief. It seems like we get a little more into the weeds, which is good when we do question and answers. So I know there's a lot of new members here, and some may already be well up to speed on what we do, the work we do, the products and the services we provide to the public here in Wyoming and other places, and some that don't. So I want to really quickly run through some of that, share some numbers and some facts and figures, and then save some time for conversations. And I will defer to some of the forest supervisors that are here for some of the questions that you have on specific projects, challenges, issues in your own district. So just start off by thanking you, Chairman French, Chairman Winter, Senate President Biden, Speaker Nyman, and members of the committee. As mentioned, I'm Troy Heithacker. I'm the regional forester for the Rocky Mountain region. I'm responsible for management, oversight, direction of 17 national forests, 7 national grasslands, comprising about 24 million acres across 5 states. I'm also joined by those forest supervisors, as well as the deputy regional forester from the Intermountain region, Chris Campbell, who is over those other forests that I mentioned, the 4 forests that have a slices of, well, BT's got a big footprint, and then the others have pieces that come into Wyoming. Thanks again to Kelly for the partnership and her presentation, and all of our other partners at the state government here, department, Ag Department, as well as Game and Fish, State Parks, Department of Transportation, we all work closely with here. So I'll just run through a couple things that I hope folks are interested in. So fire will be the first one I talk about. Some of the post-fire work that we're doing, that we're going to be doing. I want to give you some numbers on what we produce here and what we produced last year, what we manage in terms of timber, energy, and grazing, and then again, save some space for conversation. 2024 was a devastating fire year in Wyoming. It was a really interesting year, and to me, it was shaping up across the Intermountain West to be a really, really bad year. We had our first fire in Colorado that started in Leadville at something like 12,000 feet, which is just unheard of. And it wasn't an easy fire to put out. And then we had fires in the late fall in Wyoming that we just couldn't get around. I mean, it was incredibly challenging. Biggest fire that the Bighorn's ever seen since the era of the Big Burn. They exceeded the prior largest fire in one burn cycle, basically in one day. And this was in October into November, just unheard of behavior. I hunt in Wyoming and I recreate in Wyoming. I have a very fond appreciation for the state. And anytime I've been hunting, even late September, October, there's snow on the ground. There's no fires. And it was just really unbelievable. So as was mentioned, the elk fire on the Bighorn, the Fish Creek Pack Trail, and the Bridger, Teton, and Shoshone burned more than 215,000 acres of national forest, state land, and private and other federal lands. We've been working directly with the Wyoming State Forestry and Sheridan County on post-fire recovery effort, and the Bighorn National Forest will soon, if they haven't already, receive a significant amount of disaster recovery funds to address some of the impacts of the elk fire. On the fire mitigation front, we invested over $6 million in hazardous fuels treatments across our 8 national forests within Wyoming. These investments enabled us to treat over 74,000 acres. Typically for us, that's thinning, either hand or mechanical, mastication, and then burning, either pile burning or broadcast burning. In timber, as you know, and has been made more obvious, timber's one of our main focuses. It's always been one of our priorities. It oscillates pretty much every 4 years and where it is in our priorities, just to be honest. I grew up in the timber industry and owe my livelihood to the timber industry. I was a forester in Alaska for 14 years. And cut my teeth on laying out old growth sales on the Tongass, which was just an incredible experience that I'll never forget. So Rocky Mountain region. So my numbers here, I'm gonna have to do some math in my head because half of them are in board feet and half are in CCF. Are you guys board feet folks or CCF folks? Board feet? Oh, now I'm gonna have to go
Board
backwards.
feet. I
So,
think you have to in your executive order now, do board feet only.
okay, gosh, that'll make it a lot easier. I don't have to multiply by 5454. We did approximately 38 million board feet sold on the Bighorn Medicine Bow route in Shoshone National Forest last year. 27.3 million board feet sold on the Black Hills National Forest. And about 4 million off the Bridger Teton. So total of that is somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 million board feet in Wyoming. In partnership with the Division of Forestry, Bear Lodge Ranger District on the Black Hills, really exemplifying this work that we're doing around Good Neighbor. And Kelly and I, when we had this prior discussions and then sat down and had our timber strategy meeting, really looked at this like, there's places where it's better for the state to do the work. It's easier for the state to work. There's places where it's better for the federal staff and the Forest Service to do the work. And there's places where we work across and work with the BLM. We look at it like this for this year anyway, is that I got $10 and 10 people, and that's almost literally, not figuratively now, but we got a limited pool of resources. Where are we gonna put those resources to get the most out of the money and the people that we have? Looking at it from a risk standpoint. And so we put together a pretty comprehensive risk assessment looking specifically at milling and timber production industry and determine who's at the highest risk. And it's not perfect, but we wanted to be able to know if we're gonna put $10 here, how's it gonna impact this here? If we put $5 here, $4 here, and $1 here, so that we're making an informed decision and that the state and the federal agencies, the Forest Service specifically, are making these decisions collectively. And we came out of this meeting, we spent 2 days. It wasn't very much time to go through this, went through every forest in Wyoming, program of work for 5 years, and we came out of it with a plan and a strategy. And it's balanced, like I said, between state processes, our processes. If the state contracting process is more efficient than ours, why wouldn't I use it? If we got processes that are better and we have staff we have a district that's got more staff that can help here, we're gonna do it. But we're gonna do it collectively and we're gonna do it hand in hand. And I really think that this model that we're looking at, which is really true full shared stewardship. You guys have heard the shared stewardship term since the last Trump administration, and Secretary Perdue really pushed it really hard, and we're really embracing it here. And I think setting an example for other states and other parts of the Forest Service to replicate. And I'm really proud of it. I'm excited for what we're gonna be able to do. So the partnership there on the Bear Lodge District in 24 sold about, I'm gonna do the backwards math here, 15 million board feet, something like that. Is that the right math? Somewhere in that range.
3.5.
3.5. Oh wait, I'm going the wrong way.
You're going the
Yes.
wrong way. You doubled.
CCF,
You went
yeah, we gotta
over.
multiply by 0.5. Yeah, 3.5 million board feet, conducted veg treatments on just over 2,000 acres. They expect to sell almost double that this year and treat over 2,500 acres. And I just want to reemphasize, I grew up in timber. I did. I'm from Texas originally, but I spent 14 years in Alaska working in the timber industry on the Forest Service side, but specific and I know and I see how crucial this infrastructure is, how important the industry is, and that we can't do it and we can't keep our forests healthy without it. And I'm committed to it, committed to working with Kelly and the state and our other partners to make sure we do everything we can to keep it viable. As I mentioned, got a couple things we're doing here, and there's a lot of changes happening in the federal government right now. And we're really looking to streamline things, focus our priorities down, get back to some of our base mission, and that's occurring. We just got a new chief start today, so a lot of what I'm saying and sharing with you is gonna be my assumptions of where Chief Schultz wants to go. I've only spoken with him once, but I know many of you know him. He's from Idaho, and I think we're gonna be able to make some progress on a lot of these things. Collectively, I would say we're just looking to increase collaboration where it makes sense, cross-boundary work, leverage Good Neighbor, work with Division of Forestry, counties, conservation districts, however we can to get the work done on the ground. So I want to talk just a sec about minerals. We got a big minerals program here in Wyoming, just on the Forest Service side of things. The Medbow Route Thunder Basin National Grasslands is one of the largest mineral programs in the U.S. Forest Service. located within the Thunder Basin National Grassland, located within the mineral-rich Powder River Basin, manages 4 active coal mines, provides 20% of the nation's coal. Thunder Basin National Grassland provides 20% of the nation's coal, generates 10% of the nation's electricity, provides between 4,000 and 5,000 jobs. In FY20, our fiscal year 24, coal mines on the Thunder Basin produced over 34 million tons of coal with a sales value of over $495 million. The royalties derived from the revenue on those coal sales, half of it goes to US Treasury. I wish it came to us, Forest Service. The other half goes to the state of Wyoming. It's about $30 million in royalties to the state last year off the Thunder Basin in just coal sales. There's the active mining operations, it comprises 38 active coal leases covering 89,000 acres. Switch real quick to another leasable, what we call them in the minerals world here in the Forest Service, oil and gas. We had over 1,000 active oil and gas leases covering 317,000 acres on the Thunder Basin National Grassland alone. Over 700 active oil and gas wells. Produced over 1.8 million barrels of crude oil last year. The FY24 value of those sales was over $136.5 million. Oil production generated almost $17 million in royalty revenue, half of that to the state, half to US Treasury. Natural gas production on the Thunder Basin National Grassland exceeded over 258,000 cubic feet of natural gas products. In FY24, production of natural gas byproducts generated over $3.2 million in royalty. Together, that total is over $20.1 million in royalty, with half of that going to the state. We spoke a lot about partnerships already, so I'm going to skip through that a little bit. I think, and I hope I've emphasized how important it is to us here at all levels of your organizations, at the state, federal, and local levels. So move on to range and grazing. I know a lot of folks have an interest in that. I'd like to thank all the folks that we work with here in the state, the Wyoming Stock Growers Association, Wool Growers Association, University of Wyoming Co-op Extension, and the Wyoming Farm Bureau, great partners that we talk to and work with almost daily. We work with those cooperators to develop robust rangeland methodology and balance permittee needs with forest and grassland resiliency. The range program on the Wyoming portion of the Black Hills is an integral part of providing economic support to local economies, and annually has 33 allotments, 50 permittees, running nearly 6,000 head of cattle. The Hell Canyon Ranger District has 37 permittees in Wyoming, and they run 5,700 cattle, 100 head of cattle. The Intermountain region, there's 193 total allotments with 181 permittees for over 33,000 head of cattle and over 37,000 head of sheep. The majority of those on the Bridger Teton. Another good example of our collective work is Good Neighbor Authority Fencing Project on the Medbuzz Mullen Fire Scar. And we look to do more of that up on the Bighorn. We know there's been fence damage, and we're going to be looking to do repair work. And if the state's there with us, all the better, and hope to do that quickly. We should have money just about any day now. I work with Department of Ag here in Wyoming through Good Neighbor to streamline post-fire recovery efforts, enabling replacement of lost interior and exterior fencing while benefiting livestock permittees. In closing, I see a lot of great opportunities for this. I see opportunities for us really to set the model for how the Forest Service can work hand in hand with state and other federal partners across lands to maximize efficiency, ultimately resulting in getting more work done on the ground. We welcome opportunities to work with other parts of your state that we don't, and look forward to engaging with conservation districts and counties and increasing that collaboration. If we work together and we continue to build this relationship that we have and get work done on the ground, I think it benefits all of us. We serve the public. All of us are public servants here. It's our mission to do it, to take care of the resource. And we know that it takes all parts of it, including the industries around all of those resources I talked to do it. We can't do it without them. And we're working to make sure that we leverage every tool possible to be efficient, to deliver, and to do it collaboratively with our partners. And I'll leave you with that and try and answer some questions.
Who was first?
really appreciate, you know, the partnership and moving forward. And I would be remiss in my job if I didn't bring it up. One thing that I have not heard yet, Forest Service is the largest reservoir manager in the western United States. And I haven't heard a single conversation about how we're gonna manage that reservoir, managing that timber, that vegetative resource. And so, I'm really concerned that now we're focused on fire, and sawmills, absolutely. But all three of those are intertwined, water, the hydrology, the watershed. I know our congressional delegation.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm glad you brought it up. It's incredibly important and it's all tied together. If we can get to a point where we avoid burning those trees up, some of that wood goes to the mills, we create a resilient stand, we get in there and we get prescribed fire on the ground, we protect watersheds. We got examples of really integrated projects and working with water districts in Colorado. We're open to do that here. I know that the state has got a water board and other resources available. And we look at, I mean, when we manage, typically we're looking at watersheds. That's what we focus on. And how do we keep a watershed healthy, safe, and resilient? And delivering clean water, whether it's for drinking water, public consumption, recreation, or irrigation, is critical to life in the West. And we know that, and we can work together on it, and it's one of our primary objectives is watershed health.
And I can add just a little bit to that too. One of the things we're going to look at with the forest plan revisions, because he didn't bring that up, the forest plan revisions. So we have the Bridger Teton. We're still doing that in 4 years, right? And and we have the Black Hills. And one of the things we're going to take a look at is, when we go to do the forest plan revisions, do we do that at watershed level, manage them and set them up to manage at each one in each watershed in those forest plans too?
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Do you have anything to add to the discussion here? Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Senator?
I will struggle to answer that question. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I would, generally speaking, my experience, it's been no. And it's nuanced because you have a lot of forest where it's not available. And I say that in terms of the forest plan and the laws and regulations that govern federal land management. So you got wilderness areas. We're not harvesting timber in wilderness areas. The Shoshone is, I don't know how many % wilderness, but it's a majority of it. So we look at those numbers. If we look at it and we peel it off, which we can do this through FIA data and other sources, we could tell you that in terms of the suitable or available timber and what we're growing versus the whole gamut. So I know that seems like I'm beating around the bush or trying to avoid your question, but a lot of it just isn't available to timber harvest.
So what's the process to do part? I grew up in Blackfoot, right?
Yeah.
You know, we raised cattle there, spent my entire life. And I'm gonna be pretty blunt with you, still there and run through it. Management of the Black Hills Forest right now, via the Forest Service, to set us up for incredible large fires. The fuel reduction is in a very strange way. The understory of the growth, the grazing practices, I'll make predictions that if we continue on the path, we're gonna need a lot manage resilient forests to being on path for the rest of Wyoming, which is the black forest, and not just the black hills. And that's, if I sound a little bitter, I am. If we're still green, Wyoming spent a lot of money to try to help keep it healthy. And I don't think the timber management program, when I looked at unsuitable grounds in that areas and done, it's a recipe for not being a good healthy forest. How do we change that? I'm not throwing rocks at you, but I really get frustrated to listen about 3,000 acres in Carolina. I will tell you, my ranch has twice that number of timbered acres on one ranch. Speaker Nyman's ranch has 2 times that on his ranch. Those are 2 ranches that lay on the fringe. We aren't even coming close to doing anywhere near the management that's done. You know, frankly, managing 3, 6, 9,000 acres for Black Hills Forest is not gonna help this. I'm gonna give you the platform on it, but I can tell you for where I live, I'm somewhat bitter because I'm watching what to me is a real life nightmare emerging while I'm alive. It's being done with will.
I know Kelly wants to jump in, but yeah, so you did ask a question in there. I believe I heard one, which was how do we change things? And the forest plan revision is what I'll come to. And when I look at the forest plan on the Black Hills, it's not even that old. We got forest plans that are twice as old, but look what's happened since that plan has been signed. You had massive bark beetle infestations that created massive wildfires, and you got what we call in our vernacular is you got huge change conditions. So we need to relook at it, and we're doing it. And we've invested a ton of money in trying to get as comprehensive as an assessment on that timber and that wildfire risk and those fuels as we've ever done in the Forest Service. And I can say that hands down. There's no more comprehensive inventory than we have on the Black Hills National Forest. And we're not quite finished with the analysis, but we got the initial plot data published. It's out there, it's available, and we're looking at it. And that's gonna inform the forest plan. And I think we're gonna see some shifts. But I agree with you. And I agree that there are a lot of places out there that aren't suitable, that we haven't managed or aren't really allowed to manage for those same values. But yeah, they're at risk. And there has been a ton of management on the Black Hills. I mean, we did work really hard after the last beetle infestation and the big fires. But that doesn't mean there's still not risk out there, and you live it and see it every day.
And I will add, I know there is a look at exactly what you're talking about when it comes to wildfire in the Black Hills. I think the Black Hills is taking a hard look at roads. How are we going to catch these fires? I remember when the Elk Fire started, all I could think to myself is, did we do enough? Did we do enough on Red Grade? Did we do enough on that state trust land? Did we do enough to slow it down and stop it? We had done substantial amount of work up there between the county and the state on private lands and state lands, and you just couldn't catch it. You couldn't catch till you got to a road, till you got to Red Grade, right? Highway 14 wasn't good enough. So I think we have to take those lessons, and we have to look at our own forests across these landscapes where they have roads where we can put in these fuel breaks now to plan out around our communities, around those areas, and take advantage of future planning when it comes to wildfire at large scale. And I know they're taking a hard look at that. I think what you're also getting to is programmatic, doing larger scale NEPA too. And I do think that is something that all the forests are taking a good look at, because the ones that have NEPA on the ground right now are moving forward with projects quite quicker. The ones that have to do a CE or you're seeing that immediate need not happening right away. So that it was something that we have really worked with the region and the forest to discuss and trying to get NEPA done so we can move these projects quite quicker forward. But when we're doing that, doing exactly what you're looking at, when we're looking at these forests, we're looking at these large scale fires. How are we gonna catch them now? Where are we gonna catch them? because that was a real eye opener for us, I think, in the Bighorns.
Actually, get honest input in the Black Hills Forest Plan to actually affect management changes. But I put $1.5 million in the Wyoming budget cut. And we've had a very hard time, from my standpoint, getting honest input into it. I think we're dangerously close to following the model of the other western states, not having sawmill management. You know, point in time that we don't have active sawmill investment in Black Hills. The timber on my ranch in Black Hills just went from being an emergent part of my business to noxious. It's basically invades and takes us over. I implore you to take a look at it. It's a natural resource. As I visited with our folks, if we're going to err on how we manage it, let's manage it to a lower fire level and a little tighter management. And we can let it regrow. This is not something. It's not like a mineral that we take at one time. And I'm just very concerned that we're being overly prescriptive on protecting what we see as the forest. And I tell you, the forest acres on my place have probably changed 20% in the last 3 years. They grow into all the meadows that come out. We've seen it in Black Hills with pictures of Augusta. The forested acres of Black Hills is probably 3 or 4 times what it was during the Smith period, maybe 5 or 6 times. And now we're managing those acres like they're emergent forests. At what point do we actually get this down? I go back. I've lived 70 million. We were at 120 on the Black Hills when I was in high school. What has changed? And how do we go back to that new plan? I see a new plan coming that's going to do exactly what you're saying. You're going to be handcuffed and say, I can't do it. Help me figure out a way that we can actually manage the desired outcome.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what's changed? I mean, you saw what changed. We had a huge bark beetle infestation, and then we had really big fires, and that burned up a lot of the timber and it killed a lot of the timber. So when you look at just we have more data on this than we have on any forest, and we can sit down. I'm happy to meet with you, Mr. Driscoll, and anybody else who wants to look at numbers, and we got them. I'm not making excuses either, but that's one of the big things that changed, and that's one of the things that's going to drive parts of the forest plan. Now, when we go to the forest plan, you guys all know here, Wyoming is very vocal around NOGA. I hate to even say that word. I know it's like a trigger word for folks. It's done, so we can talk about it as what's not happening now, but we look at cooperating agency status. And when you guys can be at the table with this, and that's part of how you get your honest voice in the room and help steer it. I mean, ultimately, these are public lands, right? The people own them. It's not us, it's not me, it's all of us, and we need that input. And it varies, and that's why we do these things locally. It's not, the plan's not coming out of DC, it's coming out of Black Hills.
Yes, Senator Hicks?
So, Mr. Chairman, just somebody that's been involved in forestry management for 30 years, this is like Groundhog Day all over when I listen to you talk about, we got all this analysis, almost analysis. You had a chief one time named Jack Ward Thomas and identified one of the fundamental problems and obstacles in the Forest Service. I think he termed it analysis paralysis. And what I just heard, so we're 25 years later, and we're still sitting here talking about analysis and paralysis. And I think this gets to the issue my colleague here from Devil's Tower is, I think we're tired of analyzing stuff, and it's time to start managing stuff. We're 25 years down the identification of the problem. What I keep hearing is this is the problem. There is a tremendous level of frustration when I sit here and hear this. We got to get the NEPA. NEPA is basically an analysis from this environmental that hygiene. And we have to do more analysis. You know what? There's a thing called common sense. Maybe we ought to just, and you as a forester know, when you walk in the forest, what prescription is. You know. How are we going to get to this issue of keeping around this analysis?
Go ahead.
I know Kelly's itching here. Yeah. Yeah, Jack Ward Thomas, yeah, that's when I cut my teeth in the agency, right? The spotted owl, and I was up in the Northwest, so I watched all that happen, and trying to tell the barred owls were actually the issue, not the logging. I'm just sorry, that's a bad joke, but I did get a laugh. We're not in analysis paralysis. We're not doing analysis right now, and we're not waiting on it. We're revising the forest plan, and that data is going to inform it like it would. We always do an inventory to determine what your ASQ, allowable sale quantity, is going to be in all those pieces, and things have changed. So, but we're not even doing that. That's contracted out. That work's happening. We did it with the state of Wyoming, the state of South Dakota, to keep it so it's not looking like it's the Forest Service trying to manipulate figures. What I'm focused on right now is getting stuff down on the ground. And that's what we met for 2 days to determine, is how we can take what we have, be as efficient and effective as possible to get work on done on the ground. Like, I love collaboratives, I love talking, I love public meetings, but none of it's worth anything if we're not treating acres and getting wood out of the forest. And that's what we're focused on. And I hope Kelly would agree that that's what we're trying to do. But again, the analogy for me is like, I got 10 people, I got $10. How do I put them and where do I put them to be as efficient as possible? And like I said, I got a team that's looking at, what are my bare minimum requirements? Like, I got NEPA, right? I got National Historic Preservation Act. I got Endangered Species Act. I got a myriad of other regulations and procedures that take me 9 months to hire seasonal now and whatever else. But those are just excuses. We got a lot of people and we got resources to do work. But what's in my control to back those down and say, this is what we have to do. Not what we want to do. This is what we have to do. And the consequences, whether it's to endangered species or to the milling infrastructure, are that if it all burns, then it's all gone. The habitat's gone for the endangered species, whether it's plants or owls or bats. And we need to conserve that. And part of that also conserves industry. So I, again, would just reiterate that I have no secrets, full transparency with the state. Kelly knows my budget. Kelly knows where our work is, where we have gaps. She's trying to help us out. And we are focused on getting as much work done as we can with the resources we have. And I don't know what else to do right now. I am optimistic that Fix Our Forest Act is going to pass. I believe it will. And there's a lot of opportunities to streamline work through that and some of the other work that Congress and DC is pushing through. And we're ready. We have projects lined up. As soon as that bill passes, we're ready to move out on. And look, anybody that's a forester also knows that we don't just go and clear cut everything and leave it with no seed tree sources or replanting or anything like that. It's a sustainable resource, but only if you treat it like one. And so we manage the land for the resource, which is multiple resources, including timber values and forest health and wildlife and recreation and all those things that are so critical to the Black Hills, Wyoming, and every other place. And we can do that. If we can do our jobs and we can be as efficient as possible, we can do it. So my reply to your question is, and I asked Kelly, like, Kelly, what else can I do? Like, this is what I have, this is what I'm doing, and I'm focusing everything to try and be as efficient as possible, get work done on the ground, and do it collaboratively with our partners so that we're all on the same page and maximizing that. And I don't know what else to do. If you guys got other ideas, let me know.
Yes, Speaker Nyman.
Thank you, Chairman. I think at this point, I mean, I appreciate the information, but I do know we've got mill owners here in Loren. I would really like to hear their perspective on what they're actually dealing with on the ground.
Sure.
And be able to have some of their input on what you guys have said, and be able to maybe ask those folks questions that are actually dealing with these issues, and you guys are going to be able to turn around these issues. So if we could hear mill owners do that.
Yes, thank you. Would the mill owners like to come forward? I don't see any. There we go.
Can I speak from here, or you want me to? No. Get up here.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first appreciate your leadership, what you do with the Ag Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and all those with the House and Senate, and I thank all those from the Forest Service for showing up and the other guests. I think it's really important each year. This meeting didn't almost didn't happen. And thanks to good leadership, it was pulled back together by the group for it to happen, both with the leadership and with somebody behind me here really poking people a little bit. Her name's Kelly. So I appreciate her leadership. I'm a third generation. My name is Jim Nyman. I'm a third generation owning Nyman Enterprises. I've got two kids, and my sister has two kids involved in it. My daughter Sonia is here. She's with the company. My son Marcus is the vice president. He's just finishing up 21 years with the National Guard, and ironically, the governor and Brian Nesbitt was his boss for a number of years in the National Guard. So, and I've got 5 grandchildren that I promised my dad I'd try to give an opportunity to take it to the next level. I've navigated through 6 recessions in my lifetime, up and down. This recession, we've seen a drop in prices over the last 2 years since the highs of COVID, and pre-COVID prices that have really been devastating to our company. But I've lasted through every recession in the past. This is the first time that we're faced with less than a year under contract at a devastating point where I think all sawmills in Region 2 are at a crossroads, at a tipping point of what they're going to do next. So from my end, we're at a point, we need emergency action. We need support from the House and Senate to help Kelly out on Good Neighbor. We need to do whatever we can to put every effort, just like you would a fire. You don't wait and go do a bunch of planning and stuff. You put people out on a fire. We have that same emergency situation with our industry right now that I think we have to look at real seriously in what we're going to do. So when I look at the Good Neighbor, it gives me hope. When you guys help support Good Neighbor, that gives me hope that I might have a future here. I can't wait 9 months when I hear that term. When you have to make decisions in the next 6 months, whether you're going to keep running, you have to make decisions. So I'm asking you guys to give hope. I think this Good Neighbor Authority is going to allow, with what's going on in DC and the changes, is going to allow the states, and now you'll have continuity and people within the communities helping treat these forest lands. So I am a big proponent, and I really love the energy that Kelly provides in Good Neighbor. I hope that there's an infection that spreads to South Dakota and other states like Kelly has done to take Good Neighbor across the board so we can see quick action. I've watched the Good Neighbor grow over the last few years, primarily in 2 states, Idaho and Wyoming, and I can't speak enough of how important it is to our industry and what it's going to help give us life. So I have been a partner with the Forest Service for 6 decades. I enjoy that partnership. It's been challenged the last 4 years, and I look forward to the changes and look forward to, I've known Troy for a year or 2, and we've got good leadership in the region now, and I'm looking forward to what direction we can do. But we can't be arguing about how many trees we're going to cut. We need to focus right now. Do we want to retain industry in Region 2 or not? That's a decision right now. We have to make it. If you take another 50 million board feet and you look at an inventory of 4.5 billion board feet on the Black Hills, and we analyze it and wait 2 years to make a decision and we're not here, from my end, it's useless. Let's figure out collectively between the state and the Forest Service how to keep industry alive and then make those decisions. Don't analyze. We've done enough of that. Let's figure out a plan to take action. And I think we have a team coming from the top down, including Troy and the others, that can make that happen. But we can't wait months. It's got to have an action plan that starts tomorrow. I would ask the House and Senate again to reconsider and continue to help fund that funding for Good Neighbor. If you are willing to find any way to continue your funding you did before, that is one heck of an investment in our communities and our forest. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a whole lot of money on fires, and I'd hate to see that. So anyway, I would open up for other questions. I said I'd keep it brief, and I apologize. My daughter told me to don't get too carried away, and I did. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Mr. Nyman. Are there any mill owners here? I don't see any. Maybe we have one coming now.
I'm Gary Irvin from Saratoga Forest Management. I can chime in with a lot of what, almost all of what Jim said. It's like he said, it's not tomorrow, we ought to do it this afternoon. We need, not only for the industry, you know, we supply a significant amount of income for residents and towns of Wyoming. And in my particular case, probably 99% of the people that I employ reside in Carbon County. I am not a third generation sawmill owner. I come here from Eastern Oregon. No relation to Portland. But anyway, when I did, what got me here was, I was just in Oregon doing my logging and timber and stuff like that. And a couple guys come by and they said, how would you like to buy a sawmill? And I said, no, not interested. Well, that persisted for about 6 months, and I gave in. And to come out to Saratoga and had a look, this is 2004. Had a look and looked at one in Montrose, Colorado. Anyway, long story short, mills were in receivership. I spent 17 months with attorneys in Wyoming, Colorado, and Oregon, getting them out of receivership. So anyway, thanks, guys. We appreciate your support.
Yes, thank you for your input. Carly, did you have a question?
Thank you for the information you brought today. I want to touch back to some of the earlier part of the presentation when we're talking about beetle kill. You know, I think part of the concern with beetle kill is that, you know, we had a 60-degree day in February, and beetles obviously are able to thrive in conditions like that where they're not dying off from winter. What is able to be done with beetle kill? And I think the other thing would be in terms of forest management with perimeters around infrastructure or towns. What are we working on to provide defensive barriers, I guess? I think obviously we're going to see more fires. They're not going to go away. It's getting hotter, it's getting drier. And I don't know that we can manage our way out of this, but is there emphasis on defending the infrastructure that we have so that when fires happen, they're not as devastating on the people that live in our districts?
Yes, Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah. Ugh, the challenge, it's overwhelming, to be quite frank. When I think about the communities that I had the opportunity to work with and work around along the Bighorns, and I think about a fire barreling down into Buffalo, or we have fires into Story, or starting downtown Manchester, or you name it, right? There is a lot of fuel in all of our communities, and it's going to take quite a bit of work. It was actually the #1 identified gap from our fire wardens is the fuels and the need to treat fuels. And it's not just in the Forest Service lands or the BLM lands. It's also, state and on our community lands and private lands, right? So it does take all of us, and there's going to be quite a bit to do. So with that, you're absolutely right. What we talk about when we look at how are we going to manage these lands, we're not just looking at the Forest Service lands, and then we're looking at what we call the wild and urban interface. In Wyoming, it's growing. and it is something that we are going to be continuing to be challenged to protect. And with that, we have then the beetles, right? And we do have use. Gary here from Saratoga, that is what he is milling, is beetle-killed wood off the Medicine Bow route. He was also out of Saratoga, the Shoshone also sends their wood that way too. So we do have a use for it, but it only has a certain life, and then it's only going to be so good. So we as a community in Wyoming, through the states, through the conservation districts, through our fire districts, through the Forest Service, the BLM, we do look at that. We plan for fires as best we can, but there's a lot of work we're going to have to do. And so that's where the priorities come into play. That's where we talk about where's the infrastructure, where's it not. When we don't have an infrastructure, it becomes extremely costly to take care of the fuels. So if you were to look at what it costs per acre to do work up in Hewlett Country or in the Black Hills compared to what it's going to cost to do on the Bridger Teton in regards to doing work around Jackson, it's night and day, the cost. So those are things we look at and we talk about and try and plan for. But just like you saw last summer, we have a lot that we're going to be at a little bit of a mercy, the wind and the weather, because there's quite a bit to do. So with that, I know we have community wildfire protection plans. We work really closely with the Forest Service. There's just a lot to do. And I don't know if either of you want to add to that, because the funding streams for some of this, it's competitive. It's things that we have to apply for. We have a very tiny staff, so we're competing with places like California, the Front Range of Colorado. So it is difficult for us to get quite a bit of this fuels funding and this work that we know needs to get done on the ground. So it's really a true collaborative at the grassroots level between each community.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple tools that we're using already on the Black Hills. We're using a categorical exclusion for shaded fuel breaks. And that shaded fuel break, what Kelly was saying, creates defensible space. We get a fire coming here, we create a fuel break, we know we can come in, we can back burn, and we can grab the fires here. We also get timber products out of those. So multiple uses, multiple benefits. We use a strategy called PODs, potential operational delineations. And it's a great process of going through your forest. Like you can tear off of existing fire scars, existing treatments, and find places where you put in basically strategic fuel breaks. Again, same thing. We're not clear cutting, we're thinning and we're burning and we're creating these places where we know we can catch fire. And so you get a fire here, your fuel breaks here, you go there, you hit it, you get crews, you back burn, and you hopefully contain it. And we also see fires like elk fire that you just got to get out of the way. I mean, they're just ripping so hard and through some of that open country, like you can't do anything. That's a couple pieces that we're working together on.
Yes, thank you. Do you have anything?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So I know our Newcastle Forester is slated to treat approximately 400 acres in the Black Hills and kind of up in that area on our side. And we're working with State Forestry on the State Line Road project and getting access up in that area. And then we've also in the Buffalo area where we've got some beetles and budworm we're dealing with. We've been working with Forest Service entomologist Kurt Allen to address that area. And over the last few years, we've gotten forest health protection funding from the Forest Service, where every penny's been used in those areas that are afflicted. Part of our struggle is in like the Upper Slip Road area and out of Buffalo. It's Doug fir, and so none of the mills are set to take the Doug fir, so we've been primarily doing commercial firewood sales, but working hard to get that wood out of there.
Thank you, ma'am. Senator or Chairman French, do you have anything to offer? Are you wanting to talk?
I don't have anything to say right now.
Okay. Well, we probably ought to try to wrap this up. We maybe have time for one more question. Yes, Representative Ottman.
Yes, okay, I've heard all about the northeastern part of the state. What about central and north? What about Lynn? What about up in Fremont County? What about Du Bois? What about all of that?
Do you want to talk about the Shoshone or about your Dunoir project?
Yeah, we can chime in, and got the Forest Supervisor Ken Coffin here from the Shoshone, but the Dune Noir Fire Shed is one of the nationally recognized high-risk fire sheds, and there is funding there. As part of that, it gets some exemptions from some of these things, especially through Fix Our Forest Act. If Fix Our Forest goes through, all those high-risk fire sheds that have a whole bunch of exemptions where we can streamline work, and we have funding through the Wildfire Crisis Strategy that's gone up there to help fuels reductions in that watershed and fire shed.
It is more challenging in that part of the state because the infrastructure is already lost. And so it is over hundreds of miles to haul unless we are at the smaller, what we would call family operations and little mills and things like that. And we do have that in different areas in that part of the state. And that's what we really depend on when it comes to the Bridger Teton and our Good Neighbor Authority projects. There is the smaller contractors that can do that type of work. The mills that are in Wyoming currently that we're trying to keep are located mainly, like you're hearing about, in the Black Hills and down in Saratoga. But we also have one all the way over in the southwest, South and Jones, and in the Bridger Valley. They couldn't make it. We did try to have them here today too to speak on behalf of their infrastructure and their mill in the corner of Uintah County. They do head on up your way as well, up into the Shoshone and the Bridger Tetons. But it is a challenge because we have a challenge of how do we manage everything when we only have so much infrastructure left.
Mr. Chairman, I got one last.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Well, if there's no more questions, we'll shut this meeting down. And I want to thank everybody for coming. It was a nice group and a lot of good questions. And I want to especially thank the Forest Service, the BLM, and Ms. Norris for being here to answer questions and to give the presentation. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next year.
Mr. Chairman, did you want to have the BLM present anything?
If they have, we have time if you have something. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I had no idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Winters, Chairman French, and members of the Joint Agriculture Committee, I appreciate the invitation to appear before you today and provide information about BLM Wyoming's forestry and fuels program and forest conditions on BLM managed lands across the state. Again, my name's Heidi Rogers. BLM Wyoming manages significant forest resources in the state. The forestry program is actively managing forestry resources for long-term health, resiliency, and local economic opportunities. All of the BLM Wyoming field-level forester positions in the state have been filled for over 2 years, along with the state lead position that has been filled over 1.5 years. Based on fiscal year 23 Department of Interior and BLM economic analysis, BLM Wyoming forestry program provided $6.8 million in direct and indirect contributions to Wyoming's economy. Fiscal year 2024 reports have not yet been published at this time. BLM Wyoming offered 5.8 million board feet and sold 2.4 million board feet in fiscal year 24. The fiscal year 25 target is to offer 4.5 million board feet of timber as a byproduct of our forest health and fuels reduction treatments. BLM Wyoming sells thousands of cords of firewood for personal and commercial use each year, and we treat thousands of acres to reduce hazardous fuels and restore and improve forest health each year. Using the Good Neighbor Authority in conjunction with the Wyoming State Forestry Division, BLM Wyoming implemented numerous projects across state boundaries, allowing for management at landscape scales and improving accessibility to forest resources and products. A few examples of recently completed or active forest health projects in cooperation with our partners are Barley GNA in the Rollins Field Office, School Section GNA in the Buffalo Field Office, and Sheldon Canyon GNA in the Newcastle Field Office. For the last several years, firewood and Christmas tree permits have been available for sale online. The public has generally responded positively to the convenience of this system, and the number of permits sold annually has more than doubled since the program was launched. BLM Wyoming is seeing record sales of both Christmas trees and fuelwood. Whitebark pine was listed as a threatened species by Fish and Wildlife Service in December of 2022. BLM Wyoming is actively creating strategies to protect and enhance our whitebark pine habitat, along with streamlining the consultation process to continue to implement management and habitat enhancement projects. BLM Wyoming continues to see large amounts of defoliation from western spruce budworm going into the 7th year of that outbreak. An increased mortality from spruce beetle and Douglas fir beetle, possibly linked to trees stressed from drought and defoliation, has also been observed. The BLM met with forest entomologists and Health and Protection Program to assess western spruce budworm outbreak in the southern bighorns, and as mentioned earlier, to apply for that forest health protection funding to increase our treatment acres. In 2024, the BLM Wyoming Fuels Management Program treated 148,000 acres of public lands. This included 11,973 acres treated in the forest and woodlands ecosystem. The primary objectives include reducing conifer encroachment within aspen stands and in sagebrush, forest thinning to increase forest health and vigor, reducing fuel load in order to decrease our wildfire risk and severity, restoring riparian areas, and improving habitat for species including mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep, and our greater sage grouse. This is accomplished using a variety of techniques, including hand thinning, mastication, prescribed fire, and timber sales. And then on March 1st, after our president issued executive order titled "The Immediate Expansion of American Timber Production," the order, 1, recognizes the critical nature of timber and other forest products for the nation and the contribution that forest management can have for wildfire risk and reduction efforts. And it also directs the BLM and other agencies to update our policies and processes to increase this timber production and sound forest management, which includes streamlining our NEPA and Endangered Species Act consultation, improving Good Neighbor Authority and stewardship contracting, and improving Tribal Forest Protection Act implementation and guidance. The BLM is reviewing and awaits departmental guidance on implementation of this new executive order. In conclusion, we look forward to our continued work with our state and our federal partners and private industry to manage towards a healthy and productive fire-resistant and sustainable forest. Our partnerships are absolutely vital to managing sustainable working public lands and excuse me, lost my place. Thank you for having me here to speak with you today. The BLM appreciates maintaining direct communication with all of you, and I'm pleased to answer any further questions the committee may have.
Okay, excuse me. Yes, thank you for that, and we appreciate again all of you for coming. So I guess we'll shut her down. So thanks again.